John Thune, the South Dakota Republican senator, also the Senate Majority Whip. He's a big schmutty pants, an important person in the Senate leadership. Senator, very good to have you. Before I get into these other issues, including what you and your colleagues have come up with to address police departments and these other issues, we were talking about how bumpy a recovery this could be for cities, and that they might not enjoy as strong or big a workforce as they had, because a lot of people are second thinking, you know what, we don't want the hassle. What do you think?
I think that could happen. I think there are a lot of jurisdictions in this country today who, people that are sort of packed into densely populated areas of the country, our bigger cities, maybe looking for a little bit more open space. And I also think, too, a lot of that, Neil, has to do with tax policies. I think a lot of these cities across the country who have really high taxes, states that have high taxes, this may be an opportunity for people to give consideration to another place around the country, say South Dakota, where we have low taxes. But there's a bill right now that I have introduced in the Senate, which I think speaks to that issue. The state of New York, if you can believe this, it will tax people who have volunteered to go in there to provide COVID relief. So if you've got healthcare workers who've gone to New York and are there for an extended period of time, they're considered under New York tax law, they have to pay the income tax. You're required to do that. So I've got a bill that would relieve them of that responsibility, obviously. But I also think that there's a reason why people leave states like New York and move to other places around the country. And I think tax policy is certainly one of those.
I can switch gears with this Republican plan led by Tim Scott. Your South Carolina colleague has said that it's not about junking police departments. It's about making them run better. Democrats have already seized on the measure, senators, you might be aware, that it doesn't go far enough or acknowledge the role that police departments in some parts of the country can go too far. What do you say?
Well, I think that's a talking point that the Democrats are obviously going to make, but this is a good bill. It's a strong bill. It was put together based upon the consensus of law enforcement around the country, meetings with members from the African American community. And I think that Tim Scott has really done a nice job, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for it. He had others who were working with him. But they did try and find consensus positions. I mean, ultimately what we want to do is make a law. We want to get a result. We want to demonstrate to the people of this country that we've heard them, that we're listening. And in the end, we want to do some policing reforms. And the question will be whether or not the Democrats actually want a result or they want the issue. And we'll find out next week. We're going to have a vote to get on the bill. And if the Democrats vote even against proceeding to the bill, I think it will suggest ultimately what their motives are in this. But there's common ground out there. What the Democrats want to see happen, what Republicans want to see happen. There's 70–75% overlap there. There are a few things that they're proposing that are things that we just can't, are not going to go anywhere. But in the end, there is a deal there. And I think that if good people will come to the table, allow us to get onto the bill, open it up to amendments, and if the Democrats have ideas about how to improve it through the amendment process, they'll get that chance. And then let's get a result. Let's put something on the president's desk that actually improves policing in this country and sends a clear message to those out there who are frustrated that Washington is listening.
Senator, you mentioned the president. He is against this move that's been bandied about by present, former defense officials about renaming these Army bases named after Confederate soldiers, generals. Where are you on this?
Well, I'm open to that conversation. That came out of the Armed Services Committee, and it was bipartisan when it came out of the committee. I don't think, Neil, that we should completely avoid having a discussion about perhaps naming bases. If there are Confederate generals who don't have good records, and obviously they were people who rebelled against the Union, the United States. Maybe there are generals, more recent generals, or that we could name some of our military installations after. So I think it's okay to have that discussion. I'm open to that. We'll see where it goes when the defense bill comes to the floor of the Senate. But given the context that we're in these days, times change, and who we revere by way of naming military installations, I think it's okay to have a discussion about whether or not that needs to be updated as well.
I'm just curious your own thoughts then on this move to remove, from streaming services, movies like Gone with the Wind, a lot of cop shows, even kids entertainment that deals with the police. Where do you see this going? Are you okay with that?
Well, I think that stuff gets a little crazy, and that's the problem as you start down this slippery slope. I mean, thinking about renaming 10 bases in the South who are named after Confederate generals, some of whom have very sketchy records, is something I'm okay having a conversation about. But you know, classics like Gone with the Wind and some of the other things that are now being banned from some of the content providers in this country, it seems to me at least that you can carry this discussion too far. And I think we have to at some point say enough already. There are certain things about our history obviously that we don't like. They're stains on our history. We've learned from them. We're continually trying to improve. We want to be a more perfect union in a place where everybody is equal under the law. And I think that's what we aspire to. But you know, we can sometimes go too far with some of these crusades, and I think we have to be conscious of that and employ an approach that is reasonable, that's modest, that takes into consideration the deep feelings people in this country have, but let's not overdo it.
Senator, while I have you, and normally we don't discuss polls, and normally I wouldn't even bother, but I look at them in their fullness, and that they do show a trend where the president is rapidly losing support, including in 6 Midwestern battleground states, all of which he won. He now trails from anywhere to 3 to 7 points. As you often remind me, and I think rightly so, it's very, very early. We still have a ways to go. But he particularly is hurt on his reaction to these racial protests and his handling of the coronavirus situation, and what seems to be many of those polled an indifference to a spike in cases for the sake of reopening the country. Now, again, early, but trends that are undeniably, at least in polling, hitting him. What do you think of that?
Well, the president's faced with some really hard decisions, and he's been dealt a very, very difficult hand. I mean, think of all this. We had started the year with impeachment, then the virus. Now dealing with these issues of race in the country. These are complex issues, they're hard issues, and I think the president, if he strikes the right tone, Neil, can recover some of that lost ground, or at least what people perceive to be lost ground in some of these battleground states. And I think an upbeat message about the economy. If we start climbing out of this thing and the economy starts to recover and jobs come back and wages come back, that solves a lot of problems for a lot of people. And I think we're learning how to live and coexist with the virus right now, and as we head into the fall, we're going to have massive amounts of testing, way more than we have today. The vaccine is being accelerated, could be here a lot sooner than we think, and I think there's a lot of upside potential for the president if he can get out and talk about the things that he's going to do and work with us to do to get the economy back on track. I think that's where most people are. They're pocketbook voters, they're economic voters. They want to know if their lives are going to be better through all this. And I think it's important on the other issues, particularly the issue of race, that the tone change. I think the president, the White House need to deal with these issues in a very serious way, be proposing solutions, but I think demonstrate an empathy that they are hearing and listening to the American people.
Yeah, it's a tough balancing act, to your point. Senator Thune, good seeing you. Be healthy, be restful, be well. Senator
You
John
too.
Thune.
Thanks, Neil.